my dear brothers and elders and my mentor Haji Aminullah and others who have prayed for me and helped me and guided me along the way. I've been asked to share with you, why did I join the Nizam-e-Wasiyat? I want to say a couple of things first before I start. That first of all, this is not a speech. And that's not hyperbole. This is not a speech. You're going to be hearing me use the pronoun I referring to me. I'm going to be using the pronoun I quite a bit because this is not a speech. This is a chat. This is a personal reflection that Sadr Sahib has asked me to do. You're not going to hear the classical arguments about wasiyat, because that is not why I joined wasiyat. So what I want to do is spend the next minutes with you to share with you why I joined the scheme of wasiyat. In brief, brothers, this presentation is going to contain a collection of personal narratives which culminated in my joining the blessed Nizam initiated by our beloved promised Messiah, the greatest lover of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is not going to be a speech, but rather a chat, a very personal chat about why did I join this blessed wasiyat. Next, perhaps the most real and authentic way to share this with you is to describe to you why I joined this blessed scheme and to put it in the context of the setting where it took place and the two characters. I am a character, and you're going to meet the most important character in this journey of mine. Next, crossing the Wagah border. For those of you who do not know what the Wagah border is, it is a strip of land in Pakistan that separates Pakistan and India. And I'm going to explain this more as we go on. But back to the forward of this. So the setting here is very, very important because the setting took place at Wagah border in December 1975. I was 27 years old. And this was my, what was it, Haji, our second one? Maybe our second. This was our second trip to Jalsa Salana, Rabwa, and Qadian. So it was my second. The most important person in this personal narrative is the person who is responsible for me joining this Nizam. And it is the late father, it is Al-Hajj Abu Bakr Kukoy, the late father of our brother Mubarak, our Hafiz Mubarak, and his other brother who might be here present. The anointed power of Al-Hajj Abu Bakr on that day changed my life. Again, I was 27. I stand before you today, 67. This was 40 years ago. So, you have the setting, Wagah border, Pakistan, 1975, on this beautiful day. And you have the two characters, myself and Al-Hajj Abu Bakr of Nigeria. It is very proper and appropriate that any time we give a talk that we have an overarching theme from the Holy Quran. And the overarching theme that is going to be the underpinning and foundation of this chat with you comes from the Holy Quran in chapter 262, where Allah Ta'ala tells us, the similitude of those who spend their wealth for the cause of Allah is like the similitude of a grain of corn which grows 7 ears, and each ear has 100 grains, and Allah multiplies it further to whomsoever He pleases, and Allah is bountiful and all-knowing. I should also add here is the things I'm telling you here with such volition and such passion did not exist on that day in December. So I'm taking you back to my raw youth at 27 and sharing with you this blessing from this similitude, from this verse of the Holy Quran. We'll come back to it. This metaphor contains several overarching pillars. The first one, here Allah tells us the verse. It's a similitude. What do we mean by a similitude? So a similitude is like the equivalence. It's like a resemblance. So when Allah Ta'ala says that for an example, in this case, you take a grain of corn and you plant this grain of corn and it grows up into a stalk, and each stalk, and on the stalk it has an ear, and each ear has 100, and there's 7 of these. When Allah gives this similitudes in the Holy Quran, He gives this likeness. He's telling us that just like you can go to a farm, you can go and see this corn, you can see it. This is that kind of truth. Next, here, and this is the key, and those who spend their wealth in the cause of Allah, the similitude is like a grain of corn. It grows 7 ears, in each ear is 100 grains. And Allah multiplies it. He multiplies this for whomsoever He pleases. So brothers, that is my introduction. Wagah border. Wagah border is located a short distance between Lahore and, so I want you to imagine this is like a short distance, and I'll give you some more context here in a minute. There's this road called Grand Trunk Road, and in those days, we would go to Qadian first before the Rabwa Jalsa Salana. So in order to cross back and forth, we would use this Wagah crossing. And this is an actual picture that I took during those days, and that simply just says the Wagah post. This is what the Wagah border looks like. This is what the no man's land, not the border, I should say, this is what the walkway looks like. So you can imagine, we are here in Qadian. We leave from Qadian and we go to Amritsar. And once we go here, once we get to this black line here, our Jamaat members who live on the Indian side cannot cross this border. And so we're going to cross this lane that you see right here. This is the actual picture. The man in the front, this brother here that you see here, was my father-in-law, Ali Razar. I should have been walking with him, but that was not to be. In fact, instead, I was walking with Al-Hajj Abu Bakr Kokoy of Nigeria, carrying books for him. So that's the post, that's the actual Wagah post in those days. That's the actual pathway, and the The African-American brother, the third person that you see there, is our late brother Ali Raza. Next. Today we heard the Sauda Saab talk to us, and he said, you know, he said, the way we say things, or this, that it affects, not only does it affect us, but not only should we try to affect, but we should get something from that person, from those persons. And this is that man. And in those days, we literally stayed inside this room. If you could read this, this is the room where Khalifa Sani was born, in this room. And I took this picture of Al-Hajj there, again, not knowing that one of these days that I'm going to give this presentation. This was just some young man who was just taking pictures, and it was very, very striking and very intriguing. He had his glasses on. He saw my camera. He took his glasses off. He struck his pose, and there it was. I got him and the sign. If you could read it, you could see the history of this room right here. And I was in Qadian 2 years ago, and that on the outside, though authentic, still the same thing, it's much more modern today. So there we have it, brothers. We have the setting, Wagga border, and you have our dear brother, Al-Hajj Abu Bakr of Nigeria. So now, what I was going to do that I can't do is to explain to you this similitude. So now you're going to have to use your imagination. This verse says that if you took a grain of corn, so you imagine a popcorn seed. You just imagine a popcorn seed, and you plant that popcorn seed, and that seed grows up to a stalk, and on the stalk it has these 7 ears, and each ears of corn has 100 grain, and imagine that. So, what color is the corn? Corn is yellow, right? Corn is white, is that right? Corn is yellow, is white, purple, etc. What color do you think is the corn in the Holy Prophet's Jamaat, in the Promised Messiah's Jamaat? They wouldn't let me pop it here in the masjid, and I understand. But I was going to pop you some popcorn to show you that this popcorn, though it's multicolored, they have dark grains, yellow grains, white grains. When this popcorn is put in here, and then the heat is ignited, there's a very small thing here that turns it so it doesn't burn, so it doesn't stick. So what could we call as a similitude this, the heat part of this? What could we call it? Okay. What could we call this thing here that stirs it and keeps it moving until it's ready to manifest its blessing? What could we call that? Okay? We could call it that. Now, so we put oil in there, and the oil we could call what? Kindness. The way we say it. You need to spend in the cause of Allah. No, that's too rough. We need something smooth and something delicate and something lubricant. So brothers, we put oil in here. Then we put the seed. Do we not? We put the seed in here. And it goes around and around and around, and now it starts to pop. What determines which one of these pops first? Help me. The heat, okay, they're all in here. You're right. The heat, they're all in here. They're all being subjected to the same heat. But why does one or several of them pop and do it first? Or maybe they're more submissive? Or maybe they are more inclined towards something else? We're not going to belabor the corn. So now it's going around. Imagine it's going around and it's starting to pop. And it's popping, right? Do we just let it pop? What do we do? Do we just let it pop? Come on, brothers, wake up. No, we don't just let it pop. It will pop all over the place. You got 73 different grains popping all over the place. You need a nizam. You need a khilafat. You need something to contain it. Do you not? You do. So now we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them popping. And now they're popping more, and they're popping, and they're popping, and they're popping. And it looks like the more heat, the more. Now it's really, really popping. What would happen if we take the cover off? Would it stop popping? No. Do we want this all over the place? No. So the nizam helps us to keep it contained. So now that it's popped, brothers, and you have all these different colors, I would then turn this over and pass the popcorn around if we were not in the masjid. And do you think you could tell me, by looking at the corn that has been popped, which one was a black African corn? Which one was a yellow Desi corn? Which one was a white European corn? You couldn't tell me. Now maybe if you were a connoisseur like me, and I am, this is my favorite food, I could tell you, well, that's more of a this one or more of a that one, because an African has a characteristic that a Pakistani does not have, that a European does not have. They have characteristics, but we're not talking characteristics, are we? That's not what we're talking. We're talking about this similitude. So, we now have the popcorn that's popped. It's now popped, and it's finished. Okay, turn it over. Now it's time to pass and share the bowl. But here's what's interesting. If I pulled out a grain of popcorn that has been popped and just dropped it, or you looked at it, does it look like one of these seeds now? Does it look like this seed now? It does not. If I dropped it, does it make the sound like the seed? It does not, right? And which one would you rather eat? In what form? Of course, right? Now, you get my point here. You understand, you get my point. That there's yellow corn, there's white corn, there's all kinds of corn. Allah did not say that in order to get this blessing that you had to be a certain color corn. He did not say that. That's not what he said. Okay, let's move on. Now, take this first slide that's on the left. This was in Rabwa. It says, I shall give you a large party of Islam. While sitting in Kasra Caliphate, a fire was here. Khalifatul Masih Salas, he comes out. We're sitting on his couch. And he said, you know, I've spoiled you chaps. Quote unquote, direct quote from Huzur. I've spoiled you chaps. You see me 3 or 4 times a day. But a time is coming when you are going to see your Khalifa, you will be doing like this. Huzur said, do you chaps, he would affectionately call us chaps. Do you chaps know about probability? I didn't raise my hand. And we looked, we said, no, Hazur, we don't know about probability. So Hazur said this. You take 10 pieces of paper and you put the numbers 1 through 10 and you put it in a bowl. Shake up the bowl if you like. 10 pieces of paper, 1 through 10. You reach in the bowl, Khalifa Saleh said, may Allah be pleased with him, and on the first pull, you pull out the number 1. What is the probability of you pulling out 1 on the first pull? 1 out of 10. That's simple. Oh, and I'm thinking, okay, Hazur, maybe I do understand probability. No. On the second pull, he says, you pull out and you open the paper, it's number 2 on the second pull. What is the probability of that? Then Hazur went, you pull out, and then you go to number 3, and you pull out 3. And on number 4, you pull out number 4, number 5, and you go on, and it increases exponentially. So he says, okay, hold that thought. What is the probability, he said, of the earth spinning around on its axis? And if the earth spinning around on its imaginary axis was just 100 feet closer to the sun, we would bake. 100 feet away, we would freeze to death. What is the probability, he said, of the earth being exactly where it's supposed to be? Wow, we were stunned. Now, I'm going to add to that, inshallah, as he would no doubt want us to do. What is the probability of an African from Nigeria who met an African American from Dayton, Ohio? So you have an African and an American of African descent meeting on this place. What is the probability of that? So, okay. I'm carrying Haji Abu Bakr's books. We're headed to the Lahore side. So he said, so you are Ali Razar's son-in-law. You married his daughter. I said, yes, sir. That's good. Your name, you're Habeeb. Oh, that's a good name. Okay, good. So Habeeb, let me ask you a couple of questions. First, are you regular in your tahajjud prayer? 27 years old. Born in Ahmadi. I said, no, sir. He said, Habeeb, you should make at least 2 rakats of tahajjud prayer without fail. At least 2. And he explained why. And that is another chat. Next. Now we're coming to the crescendo of this chat. Habeeb, are you a Musi? Sir, what is a Musi? And then he began to explain to me what a Musi was. He gave me a quick elevator pitch of what a Musi was. And then he began to talk about himself as a Musi and why I should do this particular thing. So as we're walking and I'm carrying these books, on that short distance on that road, brothers, Al-Haji is telling me about the blessings of wasiyat from his own life. He said, did you see my son there? I left him in Rabwa. He's going to be a Hafiz one day. His name is Mubarak. I left him. I said, yes. Yes, I met him. Okay. Next. How do you make your money? I said, well, sir, I work for the YMCA. I'm just a lonely person that does this for a social service program. He said, it doesn't matter. Okay. So they take it all out. He was trying to understand, when the money came in my hand, what did I have control of? So I explained to him about the taxes a little bit, just real brief. He said, okay, I got it now. He said, now, this is what you're going to do. when you get back home, you're going to begin to give 10% of what you bring home every 2 weeks. You're going to take that 10% and you're going to give it to the financial secretary, and you're going to tell them that you are now Musi and you are starting this payment. Okay? Then he says, and he's just saying this so matter-of-factly, but the power of it and the conviction that he had. He said, next, when you go home, you're not going to ask your wife for permission. You're not going to ask your wife, sweetheart, look, I had this amazing thing, and I realized, no. Allah has given this to you. The promised Messiah has said this. Allah said, spend. You already have permission. And the YMCA does not give you this money. It comes from your Lord, in other words. So, Habeeb, you're not going to ask your wife or nobody for permission. Don't worry about your number. Don't worry about a form. You just start giving this money for this cause, for this reason, for this scheme, and you watch how Allah will bless you. Then he starts recounting to me all of these blessings that he was getting. He talked to me about his wives, plural. He talked to me about how his business went from this to this. He was not giving me these classical spiritual arguments. He was telling me that during this particular time when the Messiah and Mahdi would come, he did not want his followers to be struggling financially and in this material deluge. That's the last thing he wanted us to be struggling with. So if you do this, he said, I guarantee you, not only will your life change, but you will set into motion a series of spiritual and material happenings that's going to affect your generations. So to my African American brothers, our Pakistani brothers who come here, and they get that job after 2 or 3 or 1 interview, or they live in that gated community, or they get to go to this particular, this had nothing to do entirely with their own grit and their hard work. This is because somebody in their family a long time ago began to plant corn in this blessed scheme. And this is what Al-Haji was telling me. So he said, Habeeb, this is not just going to be for you, but you're going to be doing this for your generations. So you're going to go back. You're not going to ask permission. You're going to do this. And then, inshallah, Allah is going to bless you, etc., etc., etc. This is him. You already know that face. So I'm walking, and by the time I get halfway, the only thing I can think about is, okay, I got to go back home. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Inshallah, I'm going to do this. Haji Abu Bakr did not talk to me about all the exigencies and spiritual things. He talked to me as a young man just getting married, and how this scheme is designed to help me financially, to keep me from living as an African American in America from paycheck to paycheck. And it did. It absolutely did. So, one thing. My wife reads in the paper about this house, this mini mansion that they've restored, and they're having an open house and inviting people to come over, and they're going to do more of them, but this was 1 or 2, and to go by on Grand Avenue to see this. Okay. So she tells me about it. It's on a Sunday, and I indulge her simply because you know how we have to do, husbands. We indulge our wives. It was on the way. I said, okay, we'll stop over there, and that's it. So I'm driving at the time this really raggedy car. We pull up, there is the Mercedes and there is the Benzes and there's all these different Jags, there's all these different cars, and my car was the worst possible looking car to park to go into this open house. My wife at the time was in full purdah, veiled. I'm 27 years old. We go in, and all these people are walking around looking at this amazing structure. I'm feeling really good now because I know, can't afford this. We're not doing that. And she knows it, but she wants to be there, right? Okay. Mrs. Brown is giving the tour. And Mrs. Brown couldn't get to us, and I'm looking at the watch because I'm the general secretary of the Jamaat. General secretary, you cannot be late for your monthly meeting. You're general secretary, you don't be late for your meeting, right? So I said, hey, look, we got to go. He said, okay, I just want to say, okay, go ahead. I'll wait for you here. While she was gone, I wrote a note, Miss Brown, we are the Shafeeqs. Watch this. If nobody else takes this house, would you please give us a call? Yeah, right. Everybody wants this house. Who doesn't want this house? You remember the comedian Jonathan Winters? It was his parents' house. They owned Winters Bank, and Jonathan Winters from Dayton, Ohio. He was a comedian, and they took this house and restored it. It was magnificent. The phone rang the next morning. And Mrs. Brown said, hello? Mr. Shafeeq, am I pronouncing that right? I said, yes, ma'am, perfectly. She said, my name is Teresa Brown. You came by the house yesterday. And I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to meet you and your wife. But out of everybody who came, and looked at that house, I want you and your wife to have this house. I was speechless. We went, we looked. The last thing I was thinking about at this point was how I was going to pay for it. It was, I don't have furniture for this. Where am I going to get furniture to furnish a thing like this, right? So I called Brother Muzaffar, president of Dayton Jamaat, who used to be the Naib Amir of USA Jamaat. At the time, I was breeding Siamese cats, and he wanted one of these cats. So I told him to meet me at 931 Grand Avenue to pick up his cat. To come by the house to pick it up. I was standing because he was late, and he's usually never late, and he was going back up and down the street because there's this drop-dead gorgeous mini mansion, and then there's the rest of the houses. And he's driving up and down looking. And I'm on the porch, and I do like this. And I come to find out later, so he's thinking, oh, the cats are over here. So he came up, Assalamu alaikum. I said, President Saab, this is my house. And I'd like for you to call the azan and make dua before I move anything in here. I didn't have nothing to move in here, but I want you to bless this house. He looked at me. He said, Habeeb, I know you don't sell drugs, and I'm sure you don't do anything illicit. How in the world could you afford this? And I said, do you remember the story I told you, what Haji told me? This. And then so it went from that house, then to other things. And I was among the first there in Dayton to have the credit card, to have the this, to have the... And it was a result, brothers, of this. Next. That's what one ear of corn looks like. That's what 7 of them. You can't see this real good on this one, but it's rows, rows. And essentially, what I wish to share with you is that Allah Ta'ala has already given you permission to spend for Him. And if you are cloudy about it, He says this, similitude. Now look, your 501k doesn't do this. Your 501k won't do it by itself. If you are a Musi, you get some extra bump. Now, I'm simply saying to you this. The Nizam-e-Wasiyat is not a money-making pyramid scheme that if you do it, you are going to be rich. If you have that impression, I have not done my job here today. Haji Abu Bakr told me as a young man that if I went back to America and I didn't ask permission because the promise was, he also said, look, read the book, the will. He said, I got a copy, and what you're carrying, I'm going to give you one of these. You read it, be on the plane. But when you get back your first check, this is what you do. I did it. And among my friends, among my African-American village, among my people, I don't have to taunt. I don't have to brag and blow my own horn. They know. They know what I drive. They know what I swim in. They know where I live in Florida. It has nothing to do with nothing but this right here. And I was 27 years old. So what are the chances? What are the chances of this African and this African American being on this Wagga trail? And rather than walking with my father-in-law who had had a stroke, I'm carrying the books, not my father-in-law's luggage. I'm carrying the books of a man who would give me words that would change my life and the destiny of my family. And it had nothing to do with the arguments, those classical arguments of why we should spend. It was practical, and it was this. While we were there, I met this gentleman, and I'm closing with this one. His name is Sahabi Aluddin. He's actually staying in the room in Qadian where the red drops took place. He was a little boy. When the promised Messiah was coming to his older age and to meet his demise. We met Sahabi Aluddin. We asked for his prayers, and we asked him to strike a pose, and that is his wonderful pose. But more importantly, we asked for his prayers. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said, his companions are like stars. Follow any of them, and you will be rightly guided. I'm saying to you, Haji Abu Bakr of Nigeria was a companion. He met him. He is one of those stars. And he said to me, and now I am saying it to you, what say ye? If you are not a part of this blessed Nizam, not only are you cheating yourself, you are cheating your family, but more importantly, if we go back to this right here, this is in Rabwa. It says, I shall give you a large party of Islam. All of us have been to large wedding parties, have we not? And somebody picks up the tab for those. I'm not talking about whether or not they're right or wrong or we should do them. Those large wedding parties, they are not cheap. Those large wedding parties are expensive and they require material, financial support. What does this mean that Allah said to his Messiah that I will give you a large party of Islam to be drifting around in the latter days, broke, living paycheck to paycheck, being niggardly with what we have? No. So to my brothers who still have this misconception that it is your money, you only have a little bit of it, and that some employer gives it to you, if you go back home, on your way home, read the Wasiyat. Read it. Go back. Don't ask for permission. You already have the permission. And start giving 10%. Don't worry about the number. And quiet as is kept, I just got my Wasiyat number maybe 10 years ago. It took me 17 years to get my number. But the blessings kept rolling. They kept coming to me. So when my dear Haji that day said to me, don't ask for permission, do this, you will be blessed like I have been blessed. I'm saying for those of you who have not done it, what say ye? What say ye? Are we among this party? Are we among this large party of Islam? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. So I will end, inshallah, with simply saying this. That if you read the Promised Messiah's book, how, for an example, after I came from Hajj, and those of you who've been to Mecca, whether you have Umrah or Hajj, I went for Hajj, you know how grueling that it can be, that it is. But you also know when you come back, you feel this newness, this you feel like you're born again. You're feeling this, oh my gosh, you feel clean and purified. So I'm thinking, okay, how do I maintain this? My head is shaved, I'm this, my feet are killing. But how do I maintain this? I downloaded a book on the plane coming back. I looked at in our library, how to get rid of the budget of sin. And I'm going back to Florida, where the land of not only mini skirts and cleavage and every other thing like where you live, but even more all year round because we're the Sunshine State. How do I keep this cleanliness? So I get this book, How to Get Rid of Sin, thinking that the Promised Messiah is going to teach me a little bit more about how to cast my eyes a little this, how to do this. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with the battle in the latter days of light and darkness. And in that, I realized while reading that book, why the Promised Messiah wanted his Jamaat to be materially sound and solid and giving. And so what I'm saying to you, brothers, in effect, that by Allah's grace, we have accepted the Messiah. Lastly, Charji Muhammad Zafullah Khan came to visit us one day. And he was seeing us off, and he had lunch with us. And he was a man of very few words. He didn't make small talk or chit-chat. If you ask him a question, he answered the question straight away. So I said, Charji Saab, we're going back to America. Would you please give us some advice? He said, yes. The Messiah, the long-awaited Messiah has come. The long-awaited Messiah has come, and Allah spoke to him. What the Quran says do, he said, do it. What the Quran says don't do it. That is my message to you going back to America. So my dear brothers, Allah has already told us, if you do this, I will do this for you. Do you believe him or not? Is it not Zalika Kitabo? Do you don't believe Zalika Kitabo? You don't believe that this is a perfect book? There's no doubt in it. It is a guidance for who? If we are not that who is? If we are not the who is it? Brothers, it is us. So I ask that you please pray for the departed soul of Haji Abu Bakr. All of the financial humble means that I have acquired, that I have been able to share, it is a result of his words to me. He believed. It was not luck. It was not probability that an African and an African American were not in Vegas. We were not in Jamaica. We were not where other Africans and people of color hang out. We were at the Wagga border. At the Wagga border. And he's whispering to me the simple truths that would change my life. This scheme, if you are not, will change your life. And my last material challenge to you. I challenge anybody in this room. I challenge anybody in this room to find me a Musi here. Find me a Musi that's here at Ijtema that's living paycheck to paycheck. I'm not saying that Musis don't have problems. We do. I'm not saying that Musis don't have challenges. We do. But I challenge you to introduce me while I'm here this weekend to a Musi who's living paycheck to paycheck and doesn't have and is struggling financially. Our struggles are other things, and they should be other things because of the times we live in. Please keep me in your prayers. I greatly appreciate you listening. And for those of you who are not Musi, I humbly ask you, what say ye? Are you a party of this large party? And if you are, man up. Jazakallah.
रोशनी का सफर